Welcome to this video tutorial. In the last video, we exported this Genesis 8 character from DAZ Studio to Character Creator 3. In this video, I originally meant to show you how to adjust the different clothing and accessory items and make sure that we can reuse them with other characters. I also wanted to prepare the character so that we can export them to a game engine. All of the accessory items were no problem at all, and I could easily adjust the crown, bracelets, the necklace, and I also managed to avoid the intersection of the feet and the dress. But I ran into some problems when I actually wanted to work with the dress, especially looking at the skin weights. The first thing I looked at was changing the skin weights to a dress to make sure that the thigh and the calf bones were properly mapped onto the dress. Now I can look at a different pose. I go to Content, Poses, Female. Let's just use Ponder. And you can see, overall, the dress conforms to the bending of the leg here. That was all fine, and there's obviously a few things that we could smooth out. The back of the dress is always going to be a problem because there's so many folds and they're fairly deep in some instances as well, so you always have a little bit of distortion here. So yeah, you could repaint some of that, and you can smooth it out. And I got it to look a little bit better than that. The problem, though, was those drapes, or the veil, or whatever you want to call it. The problem is that with this template, with the dress skin weight template, you automatically also paint some skin weights onto these drapes here. And since they're really folded into itself quite a lot, it's really hard to remove those skin weights. So you really have to zoom in the camera and be able to select every single skin weight that's painted in there. And that would take hours. I got as far as removing most of it, but I never could get it to actually still bend with the leg here, with the leg bones. And it's really mapped onto everything, anything from the shoulders and the back, the spine, and so on. So everything was mapped onto this veil as well. That was quite problematic. I thought, okay, to get around this, I could either just repaint by hand all of the skin weights and not use the template, which is probably, in hindsight, the best solution. But I have to say that I don't have a lot of experience actually painting those skin weights by hand. I could just estimate and see what it looks like. But instead, I tried to look at another route. I went back to DAZ Studio, and while this is a different character, or same character but with a different dress, I just want to show I actually just hid some of the objects in the scene. So in this case, I hid the character, eyelashes, the hair, and I hid everything but the dress. I even hid the drapes. So my goal was to export the dress and the drapes individually. Because here, when you look at the scene view of Character Creator 3, the dress is only one object, and there is no hierarchy underneath here where you can actually individually select or hide the drapes. And I think this would also be good later on if we want to reuse the dress. We would probably also want a version where we don't use the drapes and just use the dress on its own. Now, in order to do that, I thought, okay, instead of exporting as FBX here in DAZ Studio, I hide everything that I don't need. And instead of using FBX, which does not support having hidden geometry, we just export as OBJ. So here you select Wavefront Object OBJ. And I select a goddess dress. And you have a number of export options here. The important one is ignore invisible nodes. And then with the other ones, I really tried just about any other combination of options here, like triangulate n-gons, and so on. So I tried all of this, and I got the dress to export and get into and import into Character Creator 3 without a problem. Let's reset our pose here. And here in the scene view, you can see I have this additional dress. Let's remove this dress. Now, this is a bit far forward, but we can move this around. It's no problem at all. The problem here is that while there's no drapes, we actually have a problem the moment we want to conform this and paint skin weights. The moment I want to work with this dress here, it starts to break. And with breaking, I don't mean skin poking through, I mean actually the vertices disconnecting and breaking, so we have gaping holes in there. And that's something that I saw consistently with a lot of different OBJ objects that I export from DAZ Studio. So if anybody sees this and has a good solution for export options or for some workflow to get OBJ objects out of DAZ Studio and into Character Creator without them breaking a lot, that would be fantastic. All of the examples I've seen on YouTube so far are just exports where you export the whole character as an FBX, and then you can, without any problem, sculpt and work on those meshes, and they work just fine. They don't break as easily. The moment I just individually export an OBJ file from DAZ Studio to Character Creator 3, it starts breaking left and right. And you can see also that you can see the individual faces here, but it's something that you can just smooth out for now. Use subdivision. That was the wrong dress, actually. Smooth the mesh and subdivision, and it's nice and smooth, and that's all fine. And then later on we can reduce to polygons again. But the problem really is that the moment I want to adjust this to the different poses, it starts breaking everywhere. And that was sort of my conclusion, where I said, okay, I'm not going to bother with this dress anymore, and let's see what happens if we use something that's slightly easier to work with. That's what I want to show in this tutorial now. So I went back to DAZ. So we still use Briallen, the same character with the pointy ears, but instead we switch out the dress, which is now Mabel dress. I think Mabel dress works for Genesis 3 and Genesis 8. In this case, we just use it with our Briallen Genesis 8 character. And I exported this as an FBX file, just like I showed in the previous video, and it imported without a problem. So let's load this character up by using the transformer. And here the import is pretty much the same as we showed in the last video. Again, I'm just setting the texture size to 2048, but you can use 4K without a problem. Texture profile, Genesis 8 female. And the texture folder is our Mabel folder that we created. Glasses are an accessory. Hair, we set to hair. Dress is fine, shoes is fine. And the stockings, we just, I don't know, set to cloth for now. I'm not sure. You can already see the warning here. Mesh is bound to the wrong bone. We can fix that later. And we click OK. So let's get started with this character. Maybe let's start with the glasses here. Now I have to admit, those glasses are really odd shaped. I just select them here, use the transform tool, selecting it with W key on the keyboard. Moving forward a little bit. The problem with those glasses is they're fairly large. We can move them just as close to the face as we can. It will probably still not be enough to actually put them right onto the bridge of the nose, but for now that's going to be good enough. You can also see it's slightly breaking through the skin here at the side. So we're pressing the R key for the scaling tool. Just scaling them up just a little bit. Nothing that's as good of a job as we can do. Maybe fiddle around to get a millimeter closer, but I think that's good enough. All right. Next, with the glasses selected, we go to Materials over here on Modify, and we have to select the lens. Scroll down all the way to Opacity, and we lower Opacity so that we get a see-through lens. Next is Address. Select Address. And the first thing we notice here is that the material actually looks different. It looks very shiny. There's no detail in the material. Go back to DAZ, you can see here the texture, the diffuse texture. Some detail that we're lacking. What we can do is here with the dress selected and under material, we just select all of the materials by holding shift and clicking. And we scroll down. Now I think this, maybe you can achieve this in a different way, but I'm just choosing to put the self-illumination up to 100, which will give us the detail back. If you have a complicated lighting setup or something and you want to render some shots out, that's fine. I just go to self-illumination, get up to 100. That makes it look like the material we exported from DAZ Studio. Okay, next we go back to conform setting here and we calculate the collision. See what the first iteration does. We don't adjust any of the variables right now. Have a look. Yep, looks pretty good. No skin is breaking through anywhere right now. Next, we can have a look at the buttons here. We can already see there's one button floating around, and they're a little bit misshaped. So let's get out of the conform tab and let's go into edit mesh. We can select those buttons by element. Now, each of those buttons has actually two elements. Try to select this here. There's the inner shape, and then there's an outer ring. So if we hold shift, we can select both of them. Otherwise, you could also roll over and try to select the rectangle selection. You can select both of them. Either way, we're now pressing W for the move tool and just moving that button all the way to the mesh of the dress. While we're at it, with the scaling tool, you can try to get something that closely resembles a round shape. It's going to be a little bit difficult. I think that's probably as good as we can do. This one is going to be even more difficult. It's kind of a teardrop shape. Not sure whether that's on purpose. I doubt it. I tried to narrow it down, and now I'm scaling it up uniformly. Not great, but for now that's good enough. You get the gist. Same here. Again, with shift selection, we try to select both elements. Narrow this one down here. This one seems to be stuck in the dress, so we might have to move this out. Yep, there it is. Okay, apart from that, it doesn't look too bad. This one here is at an angle. We actually have to rotate this one. Weird shape. Okay, that's good enough for the buttons for now. Okay, the next thing we can do is we can have a look at those stockings. Make sure we have the right thing selected. See the skin breaking through just a little bit. I guess here we have a couple of options. Let's go to conform first and calculate collision. That really makes it much better. Just a few minor spots where the skin breaks through. And if we increase the size just a little bit, it does a pretty good job. Okay. Now, if you have a look here, the feet, we actually have a problem. Our normal pose, our T-pose here, doesn't account for any shoes or any high heels in this case. What we can do is go over here to motion and select edit pose. Select mirror and then select one of the ankles. And with the E key on the keyboard, we get the rotate tool and we can rotate the foot so that the heel here of the shoe is fairly even on the surface. We can go to the front of the foot. We can adjust that just a little bit so that everything seems to be somewhat even. That's not perfect, but seems to be good enough for now. Maybe we have to rotate . the outside so that's more straight. Okay, this is fairly decent. You can have a look at where the flow contact is. Unfortunately, with the flow contact, it resets the pose. I don't really quite understand, because there was the option to set as default, but even that didn't change what kind of pose we're using here, so I'm not quite sure how this one works. But the flow contact seems to be fairly at the position, at the height of the sole of the foot. Maybe we can move it up just a little bit. That seems to be good enough. One thing we can now do is we can go to content here, and if we use this default pose here now, then it will actually reset our feet again. We would have to adjust the pose again. What we can do is we can go to custom, and you can see I already created a default T with heels. What I could do, or what I did here, is just selecting the character overall and pressing the plus button here, and it will create a new pose. In my case, I'm just going to delete it again because I already have one. But this way we can now use this default T-pose with heels if we want to reset and go back to the T-pose for this character. Otherwise it would reset every time and we would have to redo the pose editing. Now with our movement here of the feet, and with that rotation of the feet, we see there's actually slight breakage in the stockings. We go to the CMU and select the stockings again. Maybe we could use the edit mesh sculpting, and this is the pull brush, and down the intensity. Just pull those two small problem areas out just a little bit, which should do the trick. Okay, now lastly, we select our shoes and calculate collision, and does a good job here. There's no breaking of the mesh. It all seems to be fine. Great, so this is pretty good for now. This is a fairly decent character without any major issues for now. What we can do now is decide what kind of poses we want to use the character in, and we can then test those poses. So if we go to template, email, we can now use any of these, and maybe let's use lookup. Now again, we have a problem here with the feet, but we're not going to worry about this too much right now, because as we can see down here, the stockings actually don't look too bad. There's not much breaking. One problem we have is up here with the arms being bent that far, that our dress breaks. What we need to do is we need to adjust the skin weights for our dress. And with a right click on each of those bones, I can see where the skin weights are and how they're painted right now. This doesn't look too bad. The rest of the dress actually looks pretty decent. It's really just the area under the arms. We can see if with some paint operation smoothing, we really don't want to adjust this too much, because then the body here pushes out into the arm too much. Okay, smoothing not good enough for back here. We actually have to increase the weight. Okay. Have a look at the other arm. It's the same problem, same two areas. So we have to increase the weight just a little bit to hide the breaking, or the intersection of the two meshes, the arm and the body. It's not really there's not really any way to avoid them sort of intersecting. unless we actually change the pose, but we just have to make sure that none of the breakage or none of the intersection really shows to the outside, that we see the skin poking through. I'm just using the smoothing. Okay. Have a look at what this looks like. Oh, there's still just some very minor areas I haven't covered yet. But you get the point. This is basically, you just have to fiddle with this, really trying out which operation actually helps you here, because it's such a tight area there where with one operation you basically shove the weights in one direction and with the other you shove it in the other. And it's just a matter of seeing what actually closes those holes in the mesh. And it's also fairly hard to see the skin looking through, so we can just turn the color off. But even then, just with the here we can see it. Here's the skin poking through those two areas. Maybe with some grayscale. I think there was one spot up here. Up. Let's try smoothing. Up here we actually have to decrease the weight. Okay. Now we could go in and try to smooth this out with just a very low strength and a very low weight. Try to even out the geometry a little bit more, but I think we're good for now. Still see the skin breaking through, but I don't want to spend too much time on this. This video is already long enough. The other thing we see here is that the glasses actually don't work that well in that pose. And you can see we actually have an issue with the glasses here. So what we need to do is we need to change the skin weight transfer. It worked for in the default pose, but as we change the different poses, our glasses actually get reset. So let's move the glasses back into a position where we would like them to be. And now we just change it to other. Oh, I went to skin weight transfer. I'm going to change the template to other. Click apply. Okay, and let's go back to our Motion Plus email lookup. And Character Creator 3 crashed. And I have to say, this is not the first time, even with fairly simple operations, whether that's undo or whether that's, in this case, I really just changed the pose. So I probably crashed the application, I'd say about 15 to 20 times in the last couple of days. So that's something that hopefully will get ironed out. New releases or updates and bug fixes and so on, if Reallusion releases something anytime soon. But I think we basically achieved what we wanted to achieve with this character so far. The only thing we haven't achieved is saving all those different accessories and clothing items to our library so that we can reuse them later with other characters. But I will just take that as a sign that it's time to wrap this video up, and we will cover this and polygon reduction in the next video. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.